Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of That Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials on Facebook. You can find the links to our YouTube channel or our Facebook group in our video description, depending on where you are watching. Tonight's tutorial is how to create a Doodle Santa in Affinity Designer. We're going to be using Affinity Designer on a desktop. I'm using the Windows version, but the Mac version of the interface is virtually the same. Before I get started, I just want to make sure to mention that if you are interested in learning absolutely everything there is to know about Affinity Designer, including how to use the tools to actually create the artwork that you're thinking of in your head or that you have an idea for, then check out the Affinity Designer Digital Graphic Design Masterclass for Sublimation. This is a 100-hour video course that's learn at your own pace on your own schedule. It is completely user-friendly to follow and beginner-friendly. It includes one-on-one support if you have questions, and it will take you from fumbling through the software to feeling like you can tackle anything you can dream up. This is the only course of its kind on the market, and it is so much more than just teaching you to use the tools. We use a progressive buildable approach where each lesson builds on the one before it. We have integrated design challenges with chances to win prizes to help you enhance your skills. And along the way, we simply have lots of fun reinforcing everything that you're learning and showing you how to use it in real purposes for the sublimation industry. The link for that is in the video description, and you can use the code SUBTHAT to save $30 when you sign up. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we want to do is open up a document space. We will do this by going to File and then New. And underneath this layout panel, you can go ahead and set the measurements which you would like. You can choose from your drop down what units you would like. For sublimation, we always want our color format to be RGB/8 and our color profile to be sRGB IEC 61966-2.1. Now your color profile is completely separate from your ICC profile. These are two different things. Document setup settings in terms of your color settings for sublimation are always the same. If you're doing any other type of printing, you would use CMYK. You can use a standard page size if you'd prefer to do that under the print tab. And after you set your settings here, if you would like to add it to your presets, you can do that by clicking on this little plus sign, and you can right click on it to rename it once you do that. Because we're just going to be making a clip art piece today, I'm going to choose my standard clip art size, which is 3600 pixels by 3600 pixels. You want your DPI to be a minimum of 300. Mine is set at 400. You can do either. And make sure that we have a transparent background checked in our color panel. Let's go ahead and hit create, and this has started a new document. Now the layout of my panels may look different than yours. This is because I have customized my studio and you may still be in the default. You can organize your panels however you would like. They're typically all underneath this right sidebar. If you're using the Mac version, you do not have the ability to tile right here or dock in this section, but you are able to have your panels floating like such to make it easier for your own workflow. If for some reason you can't find one of the panels that you might need to use, simply click on View, Studio, and then select whichever panel it is. It should have a check mark on it if it's on your document space. If it's not on your document space, you will not have a check mark. So if you can't find a panel, but you see a check mark, look a little closer at all the tabs you have over here because it's probably just hiding. So as I mentioned, we are going to be creating a Doodle Santa Claus just in time for Christmas. This is just a fun clip art idea. If you saw our Doodle pumpkin tutorial a little while back, you probably realized that creating Doodle art actually doesn't require you to know how to draw. The best part about graphic design with vector software is that you need no drawing skills whatsoever. And that's exactly what we teach in the Affinity Designer Digital Graphic Design Masterclass. You can start with base shapes and combine them and manipulate them, and then work on adding all your accent lines to create just about anything you can possibly imagine. So let's go ahead and get started. We all know what Santa looks like. Feel free to grab a reference graphic from the internet or just follow along as we use our imagination of the Santa in our head. I'm going to start with my ellipse tool for the face of our Santa. So we'll simply select that over in our tools panel on the side. I'm going to come right up here to my context toolbar and select the white square where it says fill. You just click on it and then it'll open up your color wheel and swatches and gradient fill. Now I want my face to have sort of a peachy tone. You can of course give your Santa whatever skin tone you would like. So I'm going to bring it right there in between like the orange and the red. And I'll drag my little lightness towards the lightness and till I get a nice peach shade. And I am going to leave my stroke black. And currently we don't really have a stroke. See, this means that there is no stroke weight, but we can use that little slider there to move it up to just 0.4, 0.2%. It doesn't really need to be anything major. So we have an outline on our object. And then once you're ready, simply click and drag on your document space until you get the face shape that you would like for the face shape and size for your Santa. I'm going to select my move tool, and then I always like to have everything centered when I start. That's just me. I can make this a little bit smaller. Because it's a face, it doesn't necessarily need to be a perfect circle. You can make yours a perfect circle if you would like. Just mentally keep in mind that we're going to have Santa's hat on the top here, and we're going to have the beard down here. So we're only really going to utilize the middle section of the face. Once you have it centered where you'd like and in place on your document, you can go ahead and select that lock icon. But before I do, you'll notice as I'm moving around that these green and red guidelines appear. These are called your snapping guides, and they appear anytime you have this magnet icon selected. Now, I like them because they help make it easy as I'm moving objects around to have them aligned with each other or centered on my map. So if you don't want them, you can deselect the magnet. If you do, make sure you have your magnet selected. I'm going to select that lock function because we're going to be working a lot on layers on top of the face, and I don't want my face to accidentally get moved around. And just to make it easier to navigate your layers panel, you can click on the name, one click, and it will give you the option to rename it. I will rename mine face. Now let's go ahead and think about Santa's beard. We can do this with a series of our shape tools as well. I'm going to start with my crescent tool. So if you come down to the last shape on your tools panel for those different shape tools and select that little white corner, you can see that there are other shapes that are included in the software. I'm going to select the crescent tool. Now I want to click and drag, and I'm looking to align this along the edge of my face because I want my beard to sort of look like it is framing the face. To make it easy, you can simply make this a different color. Ultimately, we'll be making it white, but white is often hard to see against a checkered background, especially in a video. So I'm just going to make a gray for the time being, and let's see. Let's move that edge in a little bit. And I'm going to just pull on this and see if I can get this lined up right on the edge of my ellipse that's the face. I'm going to zoom in so we can see it a little bit better. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect because we can adjust this with our node tool by converting to curves. So we're just looking to get the general shape that we would want. Once you have it about in place, go ahead and select the Convert to Curves option in your context toolbar. Now we've converted this to a curve. It's no longer a shape. See, our face is still a shape. It says the shape name ellipse. This is now a curve, which means that when we select our node tool, the one that looks like a little cursor, we can adjust each of these nodes. We have sharp nodes identified by a square, smooth nodes identified by a circle. So I'm going to move this one right out so it snaps against the edge. And I'm going to grab my handlebar and just adjust it in. And then this one that's on the outside, I'm going to drag out a little bit because I do want my beard to have, you know, a nice little roundness to it. And now I'm just going to zoom out. I'm not going to worry about this part that's overlapping here because we're going to be adding a bunch more sections to really fill out our beard, and then eventually we'll add them all together. Since I have this one perfect to the edge of my circle, I'm going to select it, and you can either right click and select duplicate, or you can hit Control or Command J. I will then come up to my rotation tools, select flip horizontal, and move it on over to the other side. I do want to make sure I keep it lined up. So when you see the red guidelines at the top and bottom, that's letting us know that we are lined up with each other, and we're bringing it all the way out so it's right on the edge of that ellipse, just like we did on the left side. Now I'm going to grab my ellipse tool again and start filling in the whole beard. So I'll start with the ellipse tool. I'm gonna start with a pretty big segment in here. And then we'll work off of this segment is what I'm thinking. Okay. Now, let's make another really big oval. All you do is click and drag to use your shapes. And then you can select your move tool to sort of adjust them all in. Don't get too consumed with how everything is right in this area because we're going to have our mustache here and our nose. So it's not really going to matter because there'll be other parts covering it. If you're really particular, you could choose to go in and clean this all up, but I try not to make things any more complicated than they need to be. Okay. Let's add some good round ones down in here. And all of these currently have a black stroke outline, but if you find that distracting as you're trying to visualize, just simply click and drag on hold your mouse key down to select all of them and come to your color panel and choose no fill on the stroke, or come down to your stroke panel and select the no stroke option. And then it's a little easier to visualize how this is going to be one piece. All right. And you can always just choose to hit that Control or Command J to duplicate and make additional pieces instead of having to redraw each one. Totally your choice. I am using the Control or Command J. I do find it's a little bit faster all around. And I'm just trying to duplicate this one half of my beard to the other. So I'm using my flip horizontal functions and my duplicate. So now when I get a good look at this, the question is, do I think that this is enough to be Santa's beard? And I think we're on the right track, but I think that our bottom pieces here need to come down a little bit more. There we go, so that we really have that Santa-like beard. As soon as you're satisfied with all of your ellipses together, you can, or all of your shapes together, you can come to your layers panel. And if you select the first one, hold down the shift key and then select the last one, you'll select all of them in between. And then you can go ahead up to your Boolean operations, which are where you see this square and circle intersecting in different ways, and select add. If you want to select them individually, you can use Control or Command J and click on each individual layer. Make it a habit to work through the layers panel when you're doing that because it often gets difficult to select layers that are on top of layers when you have a lot of layers as you build out your artwork. Once again, you can click on the name and rename it so that you know what you're looking at. So let's go ahead and give this beard some shape before we do anything else with our Santa. I know that I want my beard to be white, or at the very least a very, very subtle gray. So we'll click on the filled circle in our color panel, and I'll go ahead and drag this right on over, right on down to the almost white. It's a little hard to see when we're working with a transparent background, but we'll be adding to it, so it will make it work. When you select the open circle, that is your stroke color. So for that, I am going to have black. Now, one of the secrets to creating the doodle look is that you want to be using some type of brush stroke that has texture. Now, if you don't have any special brushes installed, that is okay. All you're going to do is come down to where it says pressure in your stroke panel, and you're going to adjust this line. This is how you would create a manual pressure guide. So if you're using any kind of a touchscreen device, it responds to the pressure, and heavier pressure is going to make it thicker, lighter pressure is going to make it thinner. Here, we're just going to do that. Higher up on the graph is thicker, further down is thinner. I always like to have my start and end points for something that's a closed curve to be at the same point. That way it doesn't look weird where the connection is between them. We can add a little bit more weight just to make that stand out. So if you look at our Santa beard now, you can see that it's thinner over here and thicker over here, and it goes through this cycle based on the pressure guide that we made. And you can add as many of these points as you would like. I think I might add a few more into mine just because I think it'll look a little bit better. So you just select your points, you move them on the graph. There we go. And we have now applied this, oops. Sorry, we did not apply it to our shape because we did not have our shape selected. So make sure you have your shape selected, and then we'll do that again one more time. I'm just going to move my nodes over to where I would like them to be. You click on the line to add a node. And as I said, you can do as many of these as you would like, as few of them as you would like. You don't have to do them at all. I like them because they just really create, they aid in that doodle look. Now you can also use brush strokes if you would prefer to do that. And you would do that by selecting the textured line style icon that's right here and coming up to the brushes panel and choosing one of the brushes that you had. And we're going to do that on the second layer. So most doodle artwork that you see has two or three layers to every outline. And that just goes along with that whole doodle look. So we will create that similar feel to our artwork by choosing to hit Control or Command J or right click and duplicate on our beard. And now on our top layer, we'll select our color panel, select our filled circle. We're going to choose no fill, but we're going to keep the stroke filled. Now we don't want our stroke to be the same as the one that's below it currently. So we will select our textured line style option, and then we'll come to our brushes panel, and you can choose any brush that you would like. Now, I'm a big fan of these outline brushes. These were a freebie from the Artifacts Forge if you signed up for their newsletter. So I think I'm going to use one of these. I'm going to decrease the line weight a little bit. And then we don't want it to be over top of the other layer. We want it to be just off-centered. So if we just grab our rotation icon, this circle here in the top, and we shift it just a little bit, we have now created a secondary outline. And if you really wanted to get particular with it, you could choose to move it in a little bit on one side. You could choose to move it down. You could also choose to add a third one just to continue that look like it's a quick, fun doodle sketch. So all of these little steps are just designed to bring that out in your whole artwork. Now, our beard definitely needs some kind of accent lines to give it that texture, and also then add in our little zigzag and hash mark accent lines to just go along with that doodle look that we're going for. For the next step, we're going to use our pen tool. This is the one that looks like a calligraphy pen over in your tools panel, and if you hover over it, it does say pen tool. Before we start constructing our line, make sure to check your pressure box. And if it is not showing a straight line, click on it and simply select reset, and it will reset those previous settings that you had created when we did our variable line around our beard. So with our pen tool, what we want to do is create a node at the beginning and end of each curve, and we're going to create one long line that goes around our entire beard. So I'm going to start kind of right in the middle of this inside corner, and you'll click once to create your first node. Our next node, we want our nodes to line up with the loops that we have in our beard. So I'm going to put that one right about here. Do not select off of it, but hold down Control or Command, and you'll notice that it will convert to the node tool. And then while holding it down, you want to grab that line and just bring it out so that the roundness matches the roundness of your beard itself. And then we're just going to continue that. So we have our node selected. You can see that it's red. Click and add your next node. Hold down Control or Command and bring this out. We want it to be a safe distance from the edge because we're going to be changing the flow of this line. And we'll do the next one. Once again, bringing it down by simply holding down Control or Command to activate that node tool and moving our handlebars to adjust. This node's a little high, so while still having the Control or Command key selected, I'm going to pull that one down, widen that out a little bit. So we're putting those new nodes right in line with the loops of our beard. And then holding down Control or Command in between to activate the node tool that you simply click and drag on that line or adjust via these handles. And then of course our last node to finish it off. All right. Okay. I want my stroke that we just created to be a really subtle gray on top of our beard, but our beard be much closer to white. So let's select that bottom layer of our beard, and just to make it easy, you can select that second one and you can add beard outline. Oops. So that you can differentiate between your two layers. We want the layer that is the bottom layer of our beard that's filled. I'm going to come to that color panel, select my open fill circle, and I'm actually going to bring this much closer to white. I mean, even though it's just a little bit makes a big difference. So this looks much more white now, and the marks that we're going to add are going to help bring that out, because again, this is a Doodle Santa. Select that curve that you had at the top now. And for this one, we are going to be selecting the stroke, so the open circle. And we can come over to our swatches panel, and if you select the grays, that'll probably be easiest. And you want to just pick one of these that's really soft. We might adjust it, but just pick one that's really soft to start. Next, we want this to actually be just like a soft brush stroke. And for that, your watercolor brushes that come default are going to be the best option. So with this still selected, click on your brushes panel and find watercolors in your dropdown. And you can see which ones sort of speak to you. I like ones that taper. So this gradual watercolor 02 is a great one because it tapers off. And when I click on it, I can see that it's tapering. The 01's not too bad. Basically, you know, just click on them till you find the one that you like the most. There's not really a right or wrong answer here because it's your Doodle Snowman. All right, I think I'm going with this one, which is Basic Watercolor 03. I am going to increase my stroke just a little bit, right about 26 points. And back over in my swatches panel, I'm actually going to try and go one shade lighter. And I think that that will work. See, it's very subtle. See, that's what we want. Let me click on my beard and see that's all the way white. If I go one step between, one over from the white, so it's black 5%. I think that this combo of the lightness versus the stroke is going to be good. So you can adjust this in a little bit more if you think that it's a little too close to your edge. I just moved mine in on this side, but I think otherwise we're pretty good as far as this little subtle line goes, and we can go ahead and start adding in our darker lines, our doodle lines. So once again, we will be selecting our pen tool for this. Make sure that you have nothing selected on your workspace. You can simply click off any space that's not touching one of these layers to deselect. Select your pen tool. And for this one, we want to make sure that over in our color panel, we have no fill for the filled circle. And for our open circle, we are going to want to go with black again. You want to make sure that your pressure is set to even pressure, so you can hit that reset to make that happen. And we will start drawing in our lines. So for this one, we're looking to make little swirls. The swirls that follow along each of these loops in our Santa beard. So I'm going to start, I'm not sure. Yeah, we'll do a straight one here because it's such a small space. And then we'll do a swirl here and another one here. So for this first one, I'm going to start by removing my snapping guides. So just deselect that because they kind of get in the way when we already have a curve on our document. So I'm going to set my first one and then my second one right again, align with that point at the end of our curve. Hold down my control or command and bring this line out. Now we want this one to be a little bit closer to the edge, so you can move this along so that that happens and adjust your line with your anchors accordingly. For this one, we want to make sure that we select off because we want each of these to be separate. So that one is good there. And I think the only thing I might do is select my node tool and maybe just curve this in a little bit more like this. All right. Next, we'll go ahead and select our pen tool again, and we're just going to repeat, but this time we are going to make a little loopy swirl in here. So we'll start right about here. Again, we're staying in line with this, and we want this to curve sort of in a spiral right in here. So we're going to add a node. We'll hit that controller command, adjust this line so we have our starting point here as we curve it around. And then we'll add another node up but directly across it, and then hold down controller command to activate that node tool and rotate that one in. And then hit it one more time and use that controller command to pull that one out. So when we select off of this, we can see how our swirl is shaping up. So we've got some sharp points here, so we can click on that and then select our node tool, and we can just adjust that by just pulling this one out, pulling this one, pulling these handlebars a little wider here. There we go. And we're still a little sharp there. It's very subtle, but it is noticeable to me, so we're gonna fix that. There we go. Now we've got some roundness in there. All right. We can add our next one in right in here. And this one I'm going to do in the opposite direction, actually. So I will select my pen tool. I'm going to start right on down here, focusing on that curve and where that curve is going to be ending or adjusting. You want to have your beginning and your end of your swoops there. So I'm actually going to put a node about halfway. Hold down that controller command key to adjust your line. And I think this node actually just needs to come down a little bit more. All right, we'll add our second one, heading right on up there. That was my mistake because I selected the other curve. We are going to reverse the curve. See this little icon that swoops back? There we go. Now it's going to go in the direction we want it to go. So we'll add our next line, hold that controller command, and again, we're going to drag that one out, always making sure that we're holding it down. Now you can do your nodes first, and then you can come back in and adjust them all at once using the node tool if you would prefer to do that. Different options for whatever workflow works best for you. And I want to bring this one down a little bit because we are going to be curving it. All right, so just like we did around here, I'm going to add another one, sort of across from it, and then adjust my curve, and then bring one more inside. And again, adjusting my curve there as well. Then you can click off and have a look at it. You can zoom out and decide if you are satisfied with it. I am. I think this is good. I think I might just make this loop a little bit bigger because it's kind of small compared to the other one. So we will select that, select our node tool, and let's see. We're going to click and drag to select those two nodes first, and then we'll drag them down a little bit. And then we'll select just that outer one and drag it out. And then we'll select just the inner one and drag it in and pull on our handlebars just to round it out, make it look a little bit bigger there. There we go. Now the three that we already did, we can actually just duplicate these and put them on the other side, or you can do completely separate ones on the other side as well. So I'm going to select all three of those because I just want to duplicate mine. Since we did, the way that I set up my Santa was I did duplicate those and put the pieces on either side. So with all three selected, which you can do by holding down your control key and selecting all three, we're going to right click and duplicate. Now before you select off, go up here to your layer move tools and select move to front. You'll notice now they're all at the top to make it easy. And then select flip horizontal in your rotation tools. And you'll notice that they flip, and then just drag them on over into the same general placement. And of course you can adjust these as you need. So this one, for example, I want to bring out a little bit more. And this one I want to bring down. Just using my arrow key on my keyboard to move that around because it's a little bit easier. Okay, I think that works good. Now for my last one here, we will add in one more line. So we will select our pen tool and let's see. I think that maybe a double curve would work here. So we will sort of envision that we're going to loop around like this. Okay, so I'm going to start right about in the middle where I would want that loop, that swirl to go. And then I will put my next one across from it, hold down controller command so that I can activate the node tool and adjust it and adjust those handlebars. Then release the controller command key and select the next one. And we're just shaping it into this round as we go. And we're going to come right on down here. Make a nice big swoop in here. And then our next one up. Again, controller command J. Sorry, controller command, no J. Any time you want to activate that node tool. So we'll go across from this one. And one more. And one last one. And you can click off and sort of see where your line is. I see I've got a sharp point here, so I'm going to grab that node tool and just adjust it. We'll adjust this one. There we go. We can actually select all three of these and move them in a little bit so that everything's a little closer together. And we can make this one match the other one by simply moving that node in and dragging this down and bringing this node in a little bit more and dragging that down. Now, if you notice that they're kind of moving between a round and a square, it's because a square is a sharp node and a round one is a smooth node. And a smooth node is going to be anything that's a smooth curve. A sharp node is anything that has any amount of angle. So when we zoom out, we can see that our beard is definitely starting to come together. You can leave these strokes as just the basic pen strokes. I'm going to select all of them here, and I'm going to right click and group because anything that we do to this is all going to be together. And then you can actually try out other brush strokes if you'd rather. So if we click on our brushes panel with those selected, and I go to my outline brushes, which are free currently or were free when I got them from the Artifacts Forge, that's artifactsforge.com. This was if you sign up for the newsletter, you got these outline brushes, and I really like these. So I'm going to see if I like any of them enough. That one that I hit is kind of perfect because it tapers off at the end, and it definitely helps give us this doodle vibe with our artwork. All I did was decrease the stroke weight a little bit. So that one is General Purpose 9 of the outline brushes from Artifacts Forge, which, as I mentioned, were a freebie if you signed up for the newsletter, and I believe they are still available. And then this one's called Short 5. I think I actually like that one better, so I'm going to do that one and just decrease my line weight here or width here in my stroke panel. So now we've got our accent points to our beard, and we can go ahead and start adding in our mustache. For the mustache, it is going to be easiest just to use our tier tool from our shape tool options. So mine is already selected here, but if you put down that little white corner there, you will see all your shapes and select the tier tool. I am going to click and drag just to give it a general shape and size, and we'll just resize it and rotate it here in a minute. Let's give it some fill. So we'll come over here to our color panel, select the filled circle, and we can grab that color dropper and just drag it over to select the color of our beard so that everything matches. And now I'm going to rotate this sideways by using that rotational anchor, and let's move it into place. We still need to shape this, but we want it to be, let's turn our magnet back on, our snapping guide, so we get that line. Where's that little line to let us know we're right in the middle? All right, so this green line is giving us the middle of that. It's giving us the middle of our curve right here. It's not quite what we want. We want the middle of the whole page. We should be lining up here. I'm not sure why it's not activating. The one thing about the guidelines is you basically need to hit them just right. So this one that we're on, see how the bottom of the green line goes all the way down to the bottom of our beard, not the curve anymore. So this means that we are in the middle of our beard, so that will be fine. I'll zoom in so we can see a little bit better. On our tier tool, we can make some adjustments. So you have to have the shape tool selected option selected. I want this to be rounder and then taper off. So first we can adjust the size of our bulb here by sliding this slider here, this little red node. And notice how it's widening. You can also adjust that by simply using the slider here where it says curve. This one is going to adjust that swoop there, as you see. So I pulled it all the way down. That's adjusting the bend, which you can see up here in the context toolbar. And then the last one is the tail position, which we can move up, down. I'm going to move mine up just a little bit. And I think actually I'll grab that curve node and decrease this down. Okay, I've moved it down to about 33%. Now I probably am still going to want to make some adjustments to this, so I'm going to select Convert to Curves because that will eliminate those shape tool modifications and allow us to use our node tool to make more adjustments to this. I want this to have a bit more of a round shape and taper off down here. So I'm going to select this node first, and I'm going to come up here to where it says Convert and select Convert to Sharp. Then I'll bring this guy down a little bit and bring this one in a little bit. And then grab this handlebar and rotate that down. And now if we click off of that, we just need to smooth out the roundness right in here. So we'll grab that node tool again and we'll just adjust this line. But now, there we go. We've got that nice mustache swoosh. So we can realign this because we did make that point. So we need to adjust it over just a little bit. And then we can go ahead and right click and duplicate, flip horizontal, and put the second one point to point and have make sure that we have those red guidelines at the top and bottom to let us know that we are centered. Now our nose is going to go over top of this. So let's grab our ellipse tool and click and drag to create a nose. Doesn't need to be too big. You can make yours perfectly round if you would like. Just a little button nose. And we'll come over here to our color panel and let's give this a really soft pink. You can of course make your Santa nose any color you would like. So I'm going to be right in between the pink transitioning into the red. And then I'm going to bring this all the way down to the lightness. So I have a really, really subtle pink. See, I'm just dragging it on down. We're almost all the way to the 100% light point, as you can see there. So I just wanted like a nice subtle nose shade for our Santa. Our mustache should actually be a little bit below that. So let's move our nose up and you can actually click and drag to select all of these and just bring them down just a little bit here. All right, I think that placement wise, that will work. We're just kind of keep our visual that our eyes are going to be about here and our Santa hat is going to come down right along in here. I'm going to make my nose a little bit more oval. All right. Okay. So now we need to go ahead and add in, some different lines and accent points in our nose and our mustache as well. You could choose to add in a mouth if you would like. We might do that. We'll see how we feel here in a minute. You can add in a nose or a mouth if you would like, or you can simply leave it without. The nose is going to be pretty quick. I'm going to zoom in first, and I want to use, you could either reset your pressure gauge. Actually, we'll do the pressure gauge thing, or you could choose to use one of your brushes just to give this a less solid line. If you see these little dots here when you select your pressure gauge, that means that this is locked, so you just need to unlock that. And you do it by just clicking on with your little crosshairs on the dot. So I'm going to add, let's bring one down. I don't want this to be too thin. All right, I'm just sort of adding in some nodes, just like we did before. We're making transitions from thick to thin. So where this is at right now, if we look at our nose, See how it looks a little thinner on top and thicker on the sides? I actually think that that's kind of perfect. So we can leave this as it is, but you can adjust your pressure settings however you would like. Or again, you can choose to use the textured line style, which I use a lot, and select one of your brushes. Similar to what we did in our beard with that subtle gray texture that we added, we're going to do the same on our nose. We're going to make like one nice swoop and then a little white shiny spot right in here. So let's select our pen tool and put a node just somewhere in that top area over here on the left. And we're going to end basically diagonal from that. And then use your control key or command to switch this from the pen tool over to the node tool so that you can quickly adjust this. All right. Now, once you have that all set, you'll come over to your color panel, select your stroke fill. And I'm going to come to my swatches, and I'm actually going to select the pink that we already have for the nose, but then I'm going to come back to the color wheel, and I'm just going to adjust it out so that it's a little bit darker. We don't want it to be super dark, but see, we've got a nice little color difference there. And then once again, I want to select that curve and come over to my brushes and choose my watercolor brush option. And we don't want it to be super thick or obscure. So one that's relatively condensed, let's decrease the weight of this. I always like one that have a good taper. So that one has a little bit too much darkness, but I think it'll work. I think we just need to lighten it a little bit. So this one is, I'm using Gradual Watercolor 02. You can use whatever one you would like. Always good to zoom out to see how it's coming together there. And then we'll go ahead and select that layer again and come over here to our colors. And we just want to bring this down just a tiny bit. If you have trouble bringing it down just a tiny bit, you can always just adjust the opacity. It's sort of like a workaround. All right. Next, we're going to add a nice little shine spot here on Santa's nose. Nothing too major. And we can use our pen tool for this as well. So we'll just put 2 points just in that top area there. Hold down that controller command key to adjust it. I think this actually needs to be a little bit smaller. All right. Move that one up a little bit. Move this one up a little bit. All right, let's see where we're at there. Okay, we want this one to be white. So we also don't want this to have any dips. So come down here to your pressure box, hit reset. So it'll be a nice solid line. This one, I do want to keep a solid line. And with my stroke fill, the open circle on the top, I'm going to go all the way down to the white. I'm going to make that a little bit thicker. And then I'll just bring it in and adjust it where I would like it to be. I'm going to select my node tool here. And I do think it just needs to be smoothed out a little bit. All right. The roundness is just off by a tiny, tiny, tiny bit. All right, let's see what happens when we zoom out. Okay. We're going to make it just a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to drag it inwards. And I'm going to come up here to my opacity, and I'm going to set this to about 75% because I do want it to be visible, but I want it to be a little bit more subtle. So when we zoom out, now you can get a good visual on our nose. We've got that little textured feel here, and then just a little shine spot for Santa's nose. Pretty simple as far as that goes. Now let's talk about our mustache. We're going to add in some similar texture that we did down here with the rest of our beard. So I'm going to zoom in. We'll focus on one side and then duplicate it over to the other side once we are satisfied. So let's start with that really soft watercolor gray that we put in. We will select our pen tool, and I am going to put a start point right about here. And anytime you have something that's like an S shape, any curves, you want to have a node at the start and end of each curve. So this is a curve, so we want to make sure we put a node there. And then we can put another node at the end. And we're going to have this be one line. We'll select over to the node tool and adjust it. All we're doing is selecting those lines and dragging them so that they match the swoosh here. I think this one might need to come in a little bit because we are going to be doing that softer gray. So let's come to our swatches panel and select that black. Was it black 5%? No, the color that we used was black 5%. I believe it was this black 10% or 15% for the actual stroke. And I will come to my brushes panel. And I don't quite remember which watercolor brush I used on the beard, but I do want them to match. So all we'll do is click on the one that we used for the beard, and it shows us it's Gradual Watercolor 02. So when we select back on this one, Gradual Watercolor 02, and we'll just decrease the width of that. Good, good. Now I want another one to come down the bottom here. So we'll grab our pen tool again, and because this only has one curve, we can just do one and then either use the controller command or click over to the node tool, adjust that one down, select our watercolor brush stroke, and just decrease that width a little bit. It doesn't have to be too fancy or anything. And now we're going to go ahead and add in the same type of black lines that we did here with our curves. So let's see. We'll grab our pen tool. I don't think that these really need to be like swirled, but I guess you could swirl them if you wanted to. I'm just going to do mine more of an S shape and maybe do like a really big one here and then a shorter one and a short underneath one. So I'm working a little bit quicker now. I'm just going to put in my first node, your second node being after it starts to curve, your last one being down at the end. And this can go past that gray because it's going to be a thinner line. Select my node tool, adjust that line. We know that this one needs to be black, so we'll come to our color panel, swipe that all the way up to black. We're not going to want that big, thick line stroke there. And let's go ahead and switch over to those outline brushes and choose that one that we used before. That was called General Purpose 9. Let's see. And I like it because it tapers and it's thicker to thin. And we'll thin out that line significantly because we don't need it quite that thick. It's just supposed to be a cute little accent line. Make sure that you click off of that line before you start your next one. So grab your pen tool again. And this one, we're going to follow a similar flow. It's just going to be shorter. So I'm going to do my starting point, the end of my first curve, and then where my second curve will end. Select my node tool, adjust my line. I'm just giving it this S shape, pretty simple here. Choose my outline brush again, General Purpose 09 from that outline brushes from the Artifacts Forge, and then bring that down. And then our last one, I'm going to follow this swoop underneath. So I'll grab my pen tool and just do 2, switch over to that node tool, drag that line down, make any adjustments with the handlebars to make it refined how we would like. And then again, select that General Purpose 9 and decrease the width so that it's not quite so dominant. And then when we zoom out, we can get a good visual for our strokes that we have here on our mustache. And if you wanted to add some additional texture to the mustache itself, you can select that curve, come to your pressure box. And just as we've done with our other section so far, you can add some nodes in to create thickness and thinness variance in the line. I'm gonna move these around. Okay. And that just, again, that just goes along with giving it more of that doodle-like look. So we'll do the same thing over here. And I'm actually going to do this one different just because, again, we're going along with this whole doodle look. Still same general idea, honestly. It's not going to be that much different, but we're not specifically duplicating that previous one, I guess is more accurate. Okay. Now let's go ahead and grab all of these layers that we just put on top of our mustache, and which is going to be those top 5. And we're going to right click, duplicate. Before selecting off, we want to move to front so that they're on the top, and then flip horizontal and bring them right on over and line them up as well. Perfect. Now you can actually grab that particular section of your mustache and move it up in your layers panel so that you can group it with all of these. So we'll select all of those layers together and group, right click and group, and then grab all of our layers of our nose. So we have our 2 little accent lines and our nose itself, right click and group. So this is our nose. This is our right beard or right mustache. And then the nose belongs at the top, so we'll select that group, move to front, and then select these last pieces here, right click, group. This is our left mustache. And then let's go ahead and add in a little mouth right in here, and then we'll be able to group together our beard pieces along with our mustache. So everything is all grouped together how it belongs. To create the mouth, I think it'll be easiest just to use our triangle tool. So let's put that little, our little white triangle there and select our triangle tool. I'm gonna click and drag. Just to create a sizable triangle, we want to flip it vertical. And then I'm going to move it and sort of line it up with my nose. Over here in my layers panel, let's drag it down below the mustache layers and the nose. And let's see, we want a much smaller outline. It's fine to leave the pressure settings as we have. Zoom in so it's a little easier to see. We want this to be a little bit wider, so I'm going to bring that out. We want it to be a little shorter. And next, I think we're just going to want to use our corner tool to round this out. So let's select Convert to Curves. And then come over here to our corner tool, which is this one that looks like it has 3 anchor points around a corner. And when you select that, you'll see a little cursor with a curve underneath it when you touch one of the corner nodes. And then you simply click and drag on it to round it inwards. Now you can choose different types of corners up here and adjust the radius manually here as well. I want to select Bake Appearance before I do anything else, as long as I am comfortable with the shape of the mouth, which this to me is great. So we'll go ahead and select Bake Appearance. And the reason why you do this is because if you don't and you make any size adjustments, it's going to adjust that curve as well instead of maintaining the aspect ratio of the work that you just did. Now for Santa's lips, I think that they need to be a little closer to his pink. So this, we're going to make a duplicate of this to put it inside. So this outside one is going to be our softer pink. I do want it to be a little rounder. So I'm going to select my node tool and I'm just going to round out these sides. Just pull them out a little bit. I think that's pretty good. So I filled it with the same pink as the nose just because I want this to sort of look like the lip. You could actually do it a little bit darker if you wanted, like that. And then with that mouth layer selected, we're going to right click, duplicate, and we're going to make our new section. Our filled circle is going to be our tongue color, so something a bit more red, more berry. And then we're simply going to resize it Grab that corner node and just shrink it on down and align it in the middle there. And we can make the outline on this one a little bit thicker. So let's increase that in our stroke panel. And I think that tongue might be a little strong. Let's bring it down just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to actually lighten the lip as well because I think that it looks better if it matches the nose. So now when we zoom out, we can see we've got a nice little Santa mouth, sort of like his mouth is open. Ho, ho, ho. Super cute. I want to group all of my beard with the mouth together as one. So we will select, let's actually keep them separate, sort of. So we'll select those two layers, right click, group, click on the name of the group, rename it, select our layers from our beard. So we have 4 layers there, right click, group. This is our beard. And then we can select everything that's here. Nose, mustache, mouth, and beard. Select all of those, right click, group. And this is our lower face, we'll call it. All right, next our Santa Claus needs some rosy cheeks and some eyeballs, and then we'll go ahead and work on his hat. So I'm going to zoom in. Our rosy cheeks are easiest done with our ellipse tool. So let's select our ellipse tool and give it a nice little oval. This is going to be behind our lower face. So we're going to drag that down in my layers panel. I do not want a stroke outline on this one. So I'm going to select my open circle, choose no fill for that stroke, and just keep the cheek fill. The cheeks we can have be a little bit pinker. A little bit more pink. I guess pinker isn't really a word. And let's sort of put them right at the top of that mustache there. Get one right about where you would like it in place. And then come to your opacity panel and adjust it to about 50%. And then we're going to also, with that selected, come to our effects panel and scroll up to where it says Gaussian blur at the top. Check that box and just, we don't want it to be super blurred, but maybe just give it about 1 pixel. Just enough to make it seem a little bit subtle. You can go ahead and right click and duplicate that and then add it over on the other side as well. Remembering that we're trying to keep a visual that our eyes are going to go right on in here. So if I zoom out, those kind of do look like eyes, but once we add the eyes, it'll come together a little bit more. So let's add the eyes. We will select our ellipse tool once again and create just like a nice long oval for our eyes. Come over to our color panel with our filled circle. We're going to make that black. And we're going to rotate it out just a little bit. And then really get this sort of in the general area where you would like it to be. We can add some white inside of here so that these actually look like eyes. So let's make a second ellipse. Go ahead and click off of that and then select your ellipse tool and come over to your color panel. Change the fill to white. And we'll just add another little internal oval. Sort of give our Santa some eyes, or the look of eyes. You can move it inwards. You can move it sort of down in that lower quadrant. Sort of play around with yours until you are satisfied with where it falls. I won't lie to you and tell you that I'm like the greatest at eyes. I'm not. I really struggle with them. It's why you don't see very many things with eyeballs. I feel like they never quite look how I want them to look, especially when they're supposed to be cartoony. I mean, you can even try going smaller and sort of putting it up towards the top or down at the bottom. Well, that might be where we just leave it for right now. I can always fuss around with this after the video. All right, so once you get your pupil spot wherever you would like it, I think that my eye could just use a couple little wrinkle lines down here so we can really drive home that this is Santa. So let's select our pen tool another time, put 2 lines, hold down my controller command. Sorry, that was 2 nodes to bring the line down. Come to my color panel, select the stroke outline, make it black, come to my pressure gauge. I want no variances, so I'm going to do reset on that. I will do a textured line style though, so I'll come to brushes and I'm going to choose that general purpose 9 again. Actually, no, let me see. I'm going to choose one that is a little bit more evenly tapered. So let's try general purpose 2 and then simply decrease the width in your stroke panel. And that pupil is not going to work for me. All right, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger and bring it on down. All right, I think I need to go up a little bit, and I think our eye actually just needs to come down, and maybe that will help. I think I might have been on the right track there. Okay, I'm going to move up and over to the center a little bit more. And then once you're content with wherever your pupil is, click and drag to select those 3 layers or select them over in your layers panel. Right click, duplicate, move to front, flip horizontal, and then slide them on over so that they're next to each other and centered with each other. If you want to make it easier, you can right click and group your 2 eyeballs and then adjust. There we go. Adjust until you get the red line at the top and the bottom, letting you know that you are centered with each other. And then I'm going to move it out just a little bit from the middle green line there because we do want some space. All right, there is our Santa coming together. All right, all we have left to do is do our Santa hat, which is going to follow a lot of the same steps that we've done here. And then once we do all that, we'll add in our little accent ziggy-zag marks all over the place, sort of as a top layer. I like to do those separate because sometimes you don't really know if you want to keep them. So it'll be nice to have them as a whole separate layer that we can use or not use, depending on what you end up using your Doodle Santa for in the future. We're going to do the cuff of our Santa hat very similar to how we did the beard. We're going to use our ellipse tool and sort of create like a little clumpy shape and then use our Boolean operations to add them together. So let's select our ellipse tool. We're going to be using that soft fill that, what did we decide it was, 5% black or something? The really soft white. If you're not sure, it should be still in your color dropper, or you can grab your color dropper and simply bring it out to that beard color to make sure you do have it the same shade of white. So we're gonna click and drag to create our ellipses. And just as I mentioned before, if you find the black outline distracting when you're trying to get your rough shape together, just turn it off. Select the no fill option over there for your stroke. So let's see. I'm gonna kind of move this one, moving it over on the side because, you know, Santa's hat would kind of be going across the top here. And then I'm just gonna add some in until it looks like a fluffy brim to a Santa hat. As I mentioned before, there's absolutely no right or wrong way to do this. It's all about what you visualize for your Santa, how you visualize your design coming together. You were the artist. All right, I'm going to select my move tool now, and I'll just adjust these to even them out a little bit so that it looks more cohesive. I do know I want my ends to at least be similar. But I think other than that, This is about where I was looking to have it. All right. So as I mentioned before, also, if you have a hard time seeing it as it's white behind the transparent background, you can simply give it a different color fill. I have mine all set now, so I'm going to, you can click and drag across all of those layers to select them, or select them in the layers panel by selecting the top one, holding down the shift key, and then selecting the bottom one. It will select all the layers in between. Come up to your Boolean operations and hit that add button. I am going to shrink this down just a little bit and maybe bring it out to the side a little bit. Really trying to get that full feel for a Santa hat. I'm going to adjust it on top of Santa's eyebrows there, right about where I think it should be falling. And I do think it should fall just right in line with his eyes, and we might add in some little eyebrows afterwards. Let's add our stroke to this. We'll come to our open circle, select black that we've been using for the stroke. Come down to our pressure box and add some texture to this. And I'm going to move one up, move one down, move one up, move one down, up. And then I just like my start and end points to be in the same spot so that it does transition well. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit. All right, I'm going to decrease my stroke width. And just like we did with the beard, we're going to want to add a second one that's just like that doodle outline that looks like a second layer. And you could choose to do that on the mustache as well. I didn't, but let's go back and just do that really, really fast. We'll come down here. We're going to select that one curve that was the actual mustache, not the accent lines. Right click, duplicate. It'll go right above it. Come to your color panel, choose no fill for the fill. For the stroke outline, you can choose to add a different textured pattern or select one of your brush strokes. I'm going to come to my outline brushes and try this guy out. This is general purpose 10. Decrease that width a little bit and then simply rotate it so that it's slightly off-centered from the first one. And we'll do the same thing with the left side. Select that mustache layer, right click and duplicate. Come to your color panel, choose no fill for the fill. Choose your favorite brush from the brushes panel. Decrease that width and then rotate it. I'm going to rotate it opposite of the other side. So this just, again, adds to that doodleness. You don't need to have this everywhere. It's just nice to have it on a few key spots. So I apologize that I didn't think of that when we put together our mustache already, but it's fine. And so let's go ahead and do that with our top part as well. We will right click and duplicate for that Santa hat fur. Come to our color panel, choose no fill, select the outline. For this one, you could choose to reset the pressure if you wanted to. Come to your brushes panel. I'm going to keep using this general purpose 9. General purpose 10. I really like this one. And as I mentioned before, these are from the Artifacts Forge, and they were or still are available as a freebie if you sign up for the newsletter. That is linked in the video description. So I'm just going to off-center it just enough to help feed into that doodle look that we want here. Again, just as we did as in the beard and the mustache, we're going to add some accent lines in here that we're going to give that soft watercolor look. So I'll zoom in so it's a little bit easier for you guys to see. I'm going to move a little bit faster. We're going to select our pen tool. I'm going to put it at that first point and then the one that's directly opposite for this curve. Hold down that Control or Command key to be able to bring this out. Use your anchor points to line it up accordingly. And then I'll do my next one. We're continuing to go right in line with the curves that we've already created for the shape of our fur. And I'm not going to do the whole thing. I'm just going to do this section here. And then we can do like these three here, sort of the opposite of this one, and call it good in terms of that. So with our curve selected, we will come to our color panel, or sorry, our swatches panel, and we will choose that gray that we are using. It's black 10%, black 15%. It's very subtle. We can always adjust it. And I really like the watercolor fill. So we'll select our brushes panel. We will scroll down to where it's the watercolor brushes and choose which one you like most. It does not have to be the same one that you've been using all along. That's completely up to you. I recommend trying some different ones to enjoy some different textures. Let's see. I think I'm going to go with Gradual Watercolor 02, which I think might have been the one I already used, but normally if I'm not doing a video, I do write these down just so I can keep track of everything for when I want to go back and reference it. All right, that looks pretty good for that one. And now we'll just add another one right up in here. So let's grab our pen tool one more time. We're going to do those points, those nodes. They're going right at the beginning and end of each curve. We're adjusting our line then to match by holding the Control or Command key to activate the node tool. And if for some reason you're struggling with that, simply click off of this and choose the node tool. Once you get it lined up how you would like, it's already the color because we did adjust the color. So then we'll just choose that Gradual Watercolor 02 and we will decrease this line stroke. And we can bring this one in a little bit since it is invading into our outline and we don't want that. So for the Santa hat, we don't really need any of these little accent lines. We can just leave the floof or the fur, whatever you want to call it. We can just leave it with our nice little gray outline. So with that in mind, we can actually move this in a little bit just to create some depth. And that's all I'm really doing right there. You could, if you wanted to, add a few squiggles in here just to sort of give it that whole effect. That's completely up to you. I'm going to select these layers in my layers panel, right click and group so that that fur will all be together. And we need to move our Santa down so that we can finish off our hat here. So let's just zoom out. We need to unlock our face. Click and drag across your whole artboard and then just bring Santa down. And I'm going to move him over too because we're going to want our hat to sort of dip down in here. For the cap part of our Santa hat, we can pretty much just use some shape tools, or you could choose to freehand it by using the pen tool. So it's really up to you how you would like your flow to work. I think I am actually going to use the pen tool just because I think it'll be faster than trying to manipulate some shapes. So let's select our pen tool and practice what we've already been doing in this video. We want to start somewhere below our fluff. So I'll just put my first node there. And we always want to be having a curve at the start, or a node at the start and the end of each curve. So if we envision our cap sort of going right about here, and then really rounding out and going about here, we've got our first two lines. And let's give them some shape so it's easier to see it all coming to life. Hold down that Control key or Command and bring that one out. And then I'm going to dome this one up as well. And I want this to be kind of lumpy. So I want this little sharp turn in here. This one I'll bring down. Sort of bring it over a little bit, I think. Okay. And I'm going to sort of have it swoop down this way and then taper in, and we'll put our little fluff ball down here. So with that, envisioning it swooping, I'm going to put another node there and then one where it's going to taper in. again, holding down Control or Command and giving this some shape. We're just starting to give it shape. We'll make some additional modifications once we go ahead and close this off. So if this is going to be my point, I do want to make sure that I have a node put in here so that it looks like it is dipping inwards, like it is a tail. So I'll hold that Control Command key and bring that in. And then this is going to end right up here in my hat. And then finish off with my node back where I started. So for visual purposes, we'll come to our color panel. We're going to give our stroke black. And I'll give my fill red because it is Santa. Now this is going to be behind the floof. So let's move that down in our layers panel. Just click and drag to rearrange your layers. And we can see this really starting to come to life very easily right now. The shape of this is not quite where I would like it to be. So we can adjust that by simply selecting our node tool and adding anything that we need to make this have more of a conducive shape. So the first thing is I want to bring this node in a little bit. This is where I'm going to put my puff ball. And I will adjust my curve here with my anchors. As far as this goes, let's see. I think that this could use a little bit more doming, and that this node would be better if it was a sharp node. So we can click on it and select Convert to Sharp. And then I think adjusting our line will work a little bit better. There we go. And I'm going to move this one in. And let's see. I think we can still make this one work sort of out. Let's bring this guy in a little bit more. And I'm going to curve this one. All right, we just need to fix some of the sharpness that's in here because we want this to have a more rounded look. And all right, I'm changing my trajectory because I want to make my hat fancier than I have time for in this video. So that is a project for a different day. And for today, we do it a little bit simpler so that it's easier for all of you to follow along. So I'm just adjusting it, rounding it all out, and watching for any of those nodes that are sharp and smoothing them. Okay. I think that this will work just fine for our Santa hat for today. We can then next, we want to add that double outline. So we will right click and duplicate our red hat. That curve that we've created, we are going to choose no fill on the inside. We will choose our stroke circle, make sure it is set to black if yours is not. And I'm going to continue on with using one of my brush strokes. I'm going to choose that outline brushes, and this one I was using, this general purpose 10. And then I'll decrease that line a little bit and rotate it ever so slightly so that it appears as a double line and is offset. You can also just lift it up a little bit to get the full effect. On the original layer, you can choose to leave the stroke as it is. You can choose to add your textured line here by alternating the pressure, which we've done, or you can simply choose another brush. So one of my favorite brushes is those ones are one of my favorites, but that's not the ones I went to select. The tattoo art brushes I enjoy, but the Frankentoon comic book ink brushes are actually perfect for doodle artwork. I believe I used these in the past in the pumpkin challenge, or the doodle pumpkin tutorial. I'm going to select that top one and just adjust that line because we don't want it to be overwhelming. And there we go. And all we need is a little floof here in our bottom of our hat. This would be really cute with some sort of a pattern. If you wanted to fill it with digital paper, you wanted to make your own, maybe a polka dotted pattern, or I know a lot of you guys like cheetah print pattern. So for my little poof, I'm actually going to use my cloud tool. So let's select our tools panel and choose our cloud tool. Click and drag to create that little puff. Line it up where we need it to be, and we can adjust the number of bubbles right here where it says bubbles in our context toolbar. I'm going to go with 8. 8 looks like a good number. Come over to color, and I'll make mine, oh, what do I want to make it? Green? I want this to be the fill, so let's choose the fill circle. I feel like white's a little redundant, especially since it's overlapping the beard, but I guess it doesn't really matter. So we'll come back to our white, and I'll make my stroke black, and I'll sort of size it how I want it. And because this is doodle artwork, I don't want this to be perfect, a perfect little round one. So I'm going to zoom in, and what we'll do is we'll select convert to curves. We're going to grab that node tool again, and this time we will adjust. I'm just going to grab some of those smooth nodes and adjust them out, and maybe bring one of these other 2 sharp nodes in and just sort of round that. So really easy. We just gave this a little something something. And because this is just this one layer, I'm going to use those outline brushes again. These are really one of my favorites that I've gotten. And again, it's even a better bonus because it was a freebie. So I'm going to bring it on down. I want to double click on this to open up my brush panel and see where it says corners and it says fold, overlap, pull. I'm going to switch mine to pull because see when it's fold, it has this weird, see how it weirdly overlaps? We don't want that. We want pull so that it looks nice and smooth. So if you ever see that, that's how you adjust your corners with your brush. And decrease that down just a little bit. Perfect. Let's add a little gray texture in here, and we'll add some little black accent lines over top, just like we've been doing. So we'll select that pen tool. I want this one to just sort of be like squiggly. So I'm going to start at the beginning of my curve. I'm going to envision my curve going here. I'm going to hold down my control key and round that out. And then I'm going to envision another curve here. So I'm going to put a second node there, hold down that controller command key to bring this one out as well. And I'll adjust them at the same time. So I'm going to grab my pen tool. I'm going to do another one that's kind of going in this direction. So I'll start right there, envision it swooping in here. So I need to put a node there, hold my control and bring that out. And then envision that I want it to go right here and hold that and put that out. Oops. Not that, meant to click off of there. There we go. So let's take both of these curves that we've just created, and we will actually duplicate these for this particular one because they're small. So right click and duplicate, or use Control or Command J, and then move to front with the top 2. We're going to start with the bottom 2. You're going to select both of them. So select both of the bottom 2, and these are the ones that we're going to make gray and turn the watercolor brush. So we have those selected, and we're going to go with that black 10%. And we're going to come over to our brush panel, and we're going to select our watercolors and choose the watercolor that you want to use for those. I want something a little bit more dense for this particular section. All right, this is Gradual Watercolor 02, which I feel like I already used. What's this one? Broken Watercolor 02. All right, let's do that one. We're going to make it a little different. So I'm going to downsize it just a little bit. See where it is in there? And then for my top two, the two that are still black, those ones I'm going to go ahead and come back over to my outline brushes and choose a nice one that tapers. This general purpose 4 looks great. I'm going to shrink it on down really small because these are just supposed to be accent lines. And then I am actually going to adjust these in because I don't want them to be right on top of those gray ones that we created. Again, we're trying to have that doodle look to this. So these were a little different because the poof is a subtle texture. I'm going to click and drag both of those down here and just move them in. So we duplicated for this one because it was such a simple little part of that. So once you have all of this together, make any final adjustments to your overall shape. For me, I think I'm going to make my Santa brim there a little bit wider. You could choose to add in some eyebrows if you want to Santa. I'm going to assume my hat is covering it. We'll select all the layers that make up our hat. We will right click and group, and this will be our hat. And as for our nose and our eyes and our face, we can group all those together. They're technically can all be below our lower face. So I'm going to drag the lower face up, and then I'm going to select all of these, our eyes, our cheek marks, and our base face that we created first, and right click and group that as well. So this is our face. And for right now, our Doodle Santa can be completely done as this, but some people like little zigzag marks, and we're going to do that with our pen tool, but I wanted to make them a separate layer in case I don't want to use them in the future. Before we do that, just in case you guys are ready to say, okay, I'm done, I don't want those little zigzag lines, make sure that you save your source file. The document that you create that's Affinity Designer formatted is your source file. So you need to go to File and Save As to save an Affinity Designer file. I'll just move this up here into the freebie bundle I'm working on. And we'll call this Doodle Santa. I like to give mine this extension design file so that I know this is the one that I'm working on. And it should say that you're saving it as the Affinity file. So anytime you need to make edits, this is what you'll reopen. So go ahead and hit that save button, that's file, and then save as to do this. So for the last little hash marks that you might add around your hat, you will select your pen tool. So simple. Create little zigzag lines. You don't even have to do anything super extra with this, which is great. You're going to want to make them black, of course. And let's see. I do like to use a brush stroke for these. Something that starts out thick and goes thinner. See how that one is? And then you can always shrink this into itself if you feel like it's too wide. And you can add just a few of these. That's a little too thick, so let's thin that one down. I usually just make a couple if I'm going to do something like this, and then I just duplicate them. So let's go ahead and add another one right in here. I'm going to do those nodes. We want them fairly close together because we're trying to create this little zigzag look. So there's that. And again, you can choose a brush stroke. You can leave it as it is. You can adjust that with whatever works for the look that you want. I really like these kind of brush strokes that go from fat to thin or thin to fat because they work great for doodle accents like this. And as I said, once you have 2 or 3 made, you don't really have to do each one separately. That's totally your discretion if you want to. You can just right click and duplicate or Control or Command J and add them around a few more places. Rotate them a little bit so that they don't all look the same. Shrink them down if necessary. And rotate that just like that. And I'll make that one a little bit thinner. There we go. We can take this one. And I'll flip this one a little bit. And just put that one in. Do that one right on the edge of this mustache, I think. And then last but not least, you can just add in some little hatch marks by selecting your pen tool one last time. You're going to choose line mode for this. And for this, I am actually just going to keep my straight solid line, and we'll just add in a couple of little hatch marks. When you choose line mode, every 2 nodes that you place is going to create a line. So I like that for something like this because it does just make it nice and fast to move everything around. Those aren't quite close enough together, so I'm just going to grab that one and move it over. There we go, that's better. So grab that line mode. It's definitely better when you're trying to do small lines to zoom in so that you can actually see what you're doing easily. And again, you can decrease that line weight anywhere that you want to add some variances, and you can move them closer together. You know, just sort of sprinkle them around. These little accent marks are really just to create a nice little look of texture. And I will also tell you that when you're doing really close together nodes like this, it's a good time to turn off that snapping guide because it can just be very frustrating when you are trying to put nodes really close together and it's trying to snap them to each other. So let me just zoom out, see what we got here. How's Santa looking? I mean, I think I could maybe put 2 right here. And there we go. So all these little hatch marks that we made and the zigzags, I wanted those as a separate layer in case you just don't want to use them. So when you get them all together, go ahead and hold down that shift key to select the first and last one to select everything that's in the middle for those layers. Right click, group. You can rename this your accent marks. And in order to export your entire design without any negative space around it, select all of those layers, right click, group them together again, Doodle Santa. And then with your group selected, go to File, Export. In this drop down where it says Area, choose Selection Only. You want to be under the PNG tab and then select Export. And Doodle Santa, I always just give mine with the file extension OLAS for Of Love and Shiplap so that when you guys download my files, you are able to know that they are mine from that extension. Hit save in whatever designated folder you want, and your Doodle Santa is ready to go. If you've made any changes after your initial file save as, then just make sure to hit file and save one last time. So there you go. Relatively easy tutorial. It's a lot of repetitive steps, but this is how you can create your own Doodle Santa for the holiday season. Thank you so much for joining us and have a great rest of your evening.